My name is Jen, and I was listed as being from the IRC, which I wish I were. Last time when I spoke, I think they contacted the IRC, and the IRC contacted me, as they often do, to do workshops and stuff in central Illinois and southern Illinois, because they don't like to go, south of I-80. But they're a great group, but I am not, on the payroll up there. They just pay me to do things down here. So I am not really from the IRC. I am actually retired from the Urbana School District. I was an English as a second language teacher for a long time. And after that, I was the administrator for the bilingual ESL programs in Urbana. And then I have also, over the years, taught adjunct for the University of Illinois. Randy mentioned that the IRC has classes, and I did not get, because I lived in Urbana, I got my classes through the U of I, but where it's not convenient, the IRC does provide great classes that are kind of time-wise might be more convenient for people, okay? But I don't know how it would be to travel up there. I don't know if they do some cohorts like for weekends and stuff like that. But the U of I is teaching almost all the courses. I haven't seen the linguistics course yet online, but I taught my first online, my first online class this past summer. They're like 8 weeks. It's 2 hours of class where you have to be 2 hours a week on the computer, and you can see me, and we can do interactive exercises together. And then it's online, but not all at the same time. Sometime during the week, you have to do stuff on Moodle. So there's that, and then of course your regular assignments. And those classes can be very nice, but like when I got it, I found it was very interesting. I thought I'd hate it. I didn't, but in a way it was nice, because if somebody sent me a paper, since it's all done, I had a student in Turkey and a student in Africa, and I had a lot of students. I had a student in Colorado, a lot up in the Chicago area, but they would send the papers in over Moodle or email, and then if I glanced through it and I thought, oh, this isn't going to get a good grade, I would send it back to them and say, if you get this into me before I'm finished reading the other ones, so you haven't held me up, I'll not count it as late. And so there were kinds of things you could do online that you couldn't do teaching a face-to-face course. So anyway, that's kind of my background. I was asked to do something about vocabulary learning with English language learners. And so I also brought some books over here that I have used a lot when I was teaching. And, okay. Yeah, that's what we want. Usually when I taught, I like to teach from the big ideas, and this was something from Jeanette Gordon at the IRC, and I don't know if you deal with that kind of teaching structure down here, but the big ideas are, they're not topics, they're not details, they're not objectives, they're the big idea that you want to have people learn, and then examples fall under that. So usually when you would teach from the big ideas, and I think they use this with the SIOP method, but so these are the big ideas. You usually post them in the room. So these are the big ideas that I want you to get out of today. Vocabulary learning is important for all students, particularly ELL students. It is multifaceted and complicated. Learning happens through wide reading and shared conversations. It also happens through direct instruction. Different kinds of words are learned in different kinds of ways. And vocabulary development for first and second language learners is the same in some ways and different in some ways. Okay, so those are the big ideas. And usually with big ideas, what you really want to do is You're always going to have in your class, whether you have English language learners or not, you're always going to have somebody who has a little bit more trouble learning than his neighbor. And they're the things that they can hang their hat on. You know, they can hang their learning on it. They're the ones that maybe don't organize as easily as the other kids. I also put on the other side prompts for learning logs. Learning logs, as Randy said this morning, doing listening, speaking, reading, and writing is always important. So if you have lessons that are listening, speaking, and reading, if you want a quick writing component, a learning log is great. Some kids are really good at learning logs, and they can just write what they want. Other kids need a prompt, and so we generally do some sort of scaffolding with those kids. And so one prompt is just, what's the most important big idea I learned? And then they have to give an example. They'd write it, give an example. How does this connect to what I already know? They'd write it. And how is this knowledge useful? How will it be useful to me? I did have about 30 copies at home, and I didn't realize there would be quite so many people here. So if you want just an example of that, you know, it's there. The other thing that I generally do when I'm doing a workshop is use the ideas that I would do with kids with you, only on an adult level. So that's kind of, we're going to do some of that today. Just as background, entering kindergarten, the average student knows 5,000 words. Entering fifth grader knows 10,000 words. Obviously, these are averages. There are big differences for differences in socioeconomic status. So there was a study done that said the higher SES kids, first graders, it was done on first graders, know twice as many words as lower SES kids. So some kids are coming into kindergarten with 1,500, 2,000 words. Some kids are coming in with 500 words. And that's how you got your average. Or I'm sorry. Your average of, no, okay. So some kids are coming in with like 10,000 words, some kids coming in with 2,500 words, and that's how you got your average of 5,000 words. So you're going to have a big range of vocabulary knowledge, no matter where you teach, no matter if you have English language learners in your classroom or not. So when we talk about teaching vocabulary, what are we really talking about, and why is it so important? And so this is an activity, and I told you to sit so you'd be comfortably in a group of 4. What I want you to do is, first one, talk to your neighbors about what you did last weekend. Then we're going to do this for a couple of minutes. Then we're going to talk to your neighbors about frogs, everything you know about frogs. Then you're going to write a short paper about frogs and all you know about them. The only thing is, you can't use any words with the letter N in it. So, you have to not just blank those out of your mind. You're not going to be able to use those at all. So if you would just turn to make a small group of 4, no more than 4. I mean, you can have, and I kind of ask that you, and then actually, if you have to move to get into a group of 4, stay there when we're done, because we're going to do groups of 4 every once in a while. Okay, so. Okay, because we have a short amount of time here, I'm going to cut you short on the telling about your weekend. And what I want you to do now is to talk about frogs. You're in school and your teacher has been teaching you about frogs. And you want to, this is in preparation for writing a paper, a short paper about frogs. And you want to put everything that you know about frogs on this paper. So what I want you to do is first talk about it, because as Randy said, it's the oral part of it, the talking is really important, the speaking is important to get everybody on the same page. And then I want you to actually have somebody be a recorder and write your report about frogs. So if you could start that now. Oh, but the N has an N word. So who's your recorder?
Can you do it, Cindy? I don't have any.
Just on the back of something will be fine. You don't have to turn it in.
Do you have a pencil? Has an N in it. We were all in that class. I don't remember. It was Vickford that day.
Okay, I really want you to try not use N-words, okay? So even when you're just talking, just no N-words. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to gather back together. If you just stay in your, turn and face me, but just to sort of stay where in your group of 4 so that you'll be able to do this again. I guess I would like to talk a little bit about this experience. How did it feel? It was hard. Why was it hard?
Because I kept saying words.
You kept saying words with N in it, okay? Think of N words as your first language. So I know I would have first graders and kindergarten kids who came in and kept talking to me in their first language for the first couple of months of school. And I'd say, I mean, because I didn't understand it. But think of those as your first language, those N words. How did it feel not to be able to use them? Frustrating. And how did it feel to know a lot more than you could say? A lot more. So English language learners often have a lot of background knowledge. Not always, but they often have a lot of background knowledge, but they can't express it. So when you're looking at your English language learners and thinking about vocabulary, that's an important factor. Okay? So, that was just, I just wanted you to kind of get in the mood, and I was so glad to hear you talking. In Urbana, which is where I taught, we don't often get Eastern student teachers. But when we do, we're always really happy. I mean, we find Eastern Illinois teachers to be very well prepared. So I was glad to see you really talking here, and I wanted to do something that would kind of, after lunch, everybody's a little bit tired. But so what do you know when you know a word? First of all, we have receptive oral vocabulary. Okay, so do we know, everybody knows what receptive oral vocabulary is? Yep, okay. Productive oral vocabulary. Anybody want to tell me? Receptive oral vocabulary is what you, I think I'll just go to the next one. Is what you recognize and understand it when you hear it, okay? Productive oral vocabulary is, you can use it when you're speaking. Okay, sometimes you can understand a word when you hear it, but particularly in a second language, or sometimes I think when you're over 65, you just can't think of it. You kind of know it, it's just not in your productive vocabulary. Then there's receptive written vocabulary. Obviously, you can recognize it and understand it when you see it while reading. Do you think receptive oral vocabulary and receptive written vocabulary are necessarily the same things? Are they the same set of words? Nope. She's saying no. And you're right. Sometimes they aren't. Productive written vocabulary. You can use it when you write. I've got a question for you. Which was easier, writing the paper or speaking about frogs? Writing about frogs or speaking about frogs? Writing. Why? You could see the letters in the words? Okay, that's a good one, because you were trying to not use N's, so that's true. But what do you have in writing, especially if you're doing it on your own, what do you have in writing that you don't have when you're speaking to somebody? You have the luxury of time. You have the luxury of time. You're not on the spot. So it's important to remember that there are some ways that for an ELL student, productive written vocabulary, because you're not on the spot, you can sometimes come up with more words than when you're on the spot. But what would be more difficult about the written vocabulary than the receptive vocabulary? Especially in English, rather than Spanish or a very regular language.
There's many different meanings to one word, and there's many different words that sound the same but are spelled differently.
That's true. You don't, and so that's very true. And it's also just knowing how to spell it. Right, but you're right. You can, I mean, there's the word cell, C-E-L-L, and the word cell, S-E-L-L. Or there, and there. We have a lot of words like that. So there are difficulties with all of these areas. So again, what does it mean to know a word? First, we have to know, what does it sound like? How is it pronounced? Okay. What does it look like? How is it spelled? Okay. What word parts are there to help you recognize or convey meaning? And then where does the word begin and end? This is particularly in receptive vocabulary, receptive oral vocabulary. I once had a student ask me, Mrs. Hixson, what does in the mean? I said, in the? What do you mean in the? She said, yeah, you always say, put it in the cubby, put it in the box. What does in the mean? I said, oh, that's two words, in and the. So where we have over years, because we have heard the words in so many different combinations and everything, over the years we have figured out that you wouldn't have a 5-year-old English speaker asking that question. They would know in and the were two different words. Okay. Also, and this speaks to your point about multiple meanings. We learn our multiple meanings through context. We understand them through grammatical function, and we understand them through other words in the sentence. So if we said, let's play catch, okay, that's here. This is a noun. That fellow's a great catch. Still a noun, but totally different meaning. Alexandra didn't catch a single fish today. It's a verb. I don't want you to catch your cold, both verbs, but different meanings. So when you look at the word, oh, okay, I'll go back. Different forms of the word. Present, past, future, gerunds, used in phrases. For example, if I said to you, oh, I don't know, I didn't really prepare for this dinner, it's just sort of catch as catch can. Or, oh, that's such a catchphrase, nobody uses that anymore. Catch has 7 different meanings as a verb, 5 different meanings as a noun, 16 different derivative words, phrases, and idiomatic expressions. And this, I just looked it up, you don't have to read this. I just looked this up on the dictionary that was on the computer, and this is what I got for the word catch. Okay? So, when you look at multiple meanings, you also have multiple meanings used in different contexts, in different subject matters. So, if you were to look at the word table, a piece of furniture, how might you use this word in the context of English language arts? Somebody? A table. Yeah?
Like the silent E, are you talking about?
No, how might you use the word table in English language arts? How would you use it, a different meaning of the word table? What would you?
Like a graph.
A graph, a table. Okay, you could do that, or the table of contents. Okay, how would you use it in mathematics?
Times tables.
Your times tables. Times tables. How about in science? Periodic tables, water table. All of that is, okay, social studies. Again, a table or a graph, that would be the same thing, okay? How about the word cell? How would you use this word in mathematics?
When you're making graphs.
When you're making graphs, okay? How about in science? A cell and a zygote and all that, okay? In social studies? Pardon me? Prison, right, prison cell, okay. Anything else? Yeah. We often talk about terrorist cells, you know, cells are as a group, community group. So all of this makes vocabulary learning difficult, okay? So knowledge of words is learned through lots of exposure to the word in different contexts, both through conversation and reading. It is acquired incrementally over time. But we also need to actively teach vocabulary as part of daily instruction. Why? Why do you think so? Why do you think? It used to be, Krashen used to say that the most important part of vocabulary learning was silent sustained reading, particularly for ELL kids, because that was the best way to learn language. It was to learn it naturally, and he did a whole bunch of studies, a lot of them with Korean women, about how they just read a specific group of novels, and the novels got harder, and that their vocabulary increased greatly. Okay? And we still believe that that's true. We still think that's true. But now we know we need to actively teach vocabulary. So why do you think that is true? Got any ideas? No? Yeah?
Because they need to learn how to generalize it beyond reading, so they might be reading the words but not understand what they mean, and that's the whole aspect of it. That's
Okay.
how to use it.
Okay. Oh, okay. That you want to generalize it beyond the reading? Okay. And you're right, sometimes we do just skip over a word we don't know, and we could pronounce it. ELLs are great at this. They can pronounce everything, they can decode, but they don't know what they're reading. Okay? Let's go on to the next slide. So, the vocabulary instruction debate is wide reading is very important for vocabulary development. Extremely important. No one is saying it isn't. But the number of words in printed school English from first grade through 12th grade is about 85,000 words. And we can't teach that many words directly. We don't have that kind of time. So kids have to learn some words just through reading, through listening to television, through conversations. So direct vocabulary instruction must supplement it, because they say that you need 6 exposures to words to adequately learn it. I remember when I was back in grad school, they kept using the word, and I was just stupid, I don't know, but they kept using the word hegemony and hegemonic, and I swear it was more than 6 times that I had to look that up in the dictionary, because I wasn't getting it through context. But it was a number of times that I had to see it, okay? So, but many words occur infrequently. More than 90% occur less than once in a million words. So, about half our words occur less than once in a billion words. So how often are we going to come across these words in just general reading? So we have to do some direct instruction. So what words do students need to know? Okay, you've got high frequency words. The first, and you know, I'm sure you know about the high frequency word lists like the Dolch list and all that. The first 1,000 words on high frequency word lists equal 84% of our words used in conversation. So those are really important words to know, okay? Add the next 1,000 words, And that's 95% of words in conversation. So the first 2,000 are 95% of our just everyday casual conversational words. But only 78% of words in academic texts. So what does that tell you? The professor this morning talked about Bix and kelp. So what does that tell you? What does this, if it's 95% of the words in conversation, but only 78% of the words in our academic texts, what do you have to be careful of when your student seems to be pretty fluent in English? Anybody? If you think about the Bix and kelp that were talked about this morning, do you guys remember what Bix and kelp are? Bix is basic huh? Interpersonal. I couldn't think of the word. Basic. I told you it's being over 65. Basic interpersonal conversation skills, and the other is cognitive academic language proficiency. So, in one of the questions that the professor asked this morning, she asked, if a person is speaking English, if your student is speaking English, does that mean they no longer need special help? And the answer was no, because they don't have their cognitive academic language proficiency. So, but we think of high frequency words and the ones that we use all the time, the ones we use in conversation. I took this quote from a teacher. It says, high frequency words are hard for my students, even though we use them all the time, because they tend to be abstract. They can't use a picture clue to figure out the word with. And phonics clues don't work either. And I think here she wasn't really talking about phonics, but she was talking about morphemes. Okay? So you can't really figure out. There's no morpheme here except with. I mean, that's its own morpheme. So, and you know, a morpheme is the smallest part of the word that has meaning. There's no smaller part of with that has meaning. So, what does this tell you about, can you think, so far we've done vocabulary learning is important for all students. It's multifaceted and complicated. It has to be done through reading and shared conversations, and it has to be done through direct instruction. So, anybody have any comments, questions, anything? Okay, we're going to try another little activity, and what I want you to do is take out a piece of paper, and I'm going to read, and you can use this activity with students particularly in like social studies classes, science classes, to review knowledge. Okay? So this is what I want you to do. First, I want you to just listen to the passage. Then I'm going to read it again, and you are going to you are going to write the most important words that you hear. Okay? You're going to jot down the key words and phrases. Then you're going to work in pairs and write as much of the text as possible between the two of you, between all of your words and phrases. And then we're going to have two pairs meet, and you're going to write the paragraph. Okay, so first you just listen. Okay. And again, I'm using the content of what we're talking about. As the work of Alan Pivio suggests, one of the best ways to elaborate on a newly learned vocabulary term is to generate imagery representations of its meaning. The research on the impact of generating images to learn and remember new words is quite strong. In an analysis of 11 controlled studies, Glenn Powell found that instructional techniques using imagery produced achievement gains in word knowledge that were 34 percentile points higher than techniques that did not. A distinct difference exists between the effects of instruction in words from generalized vocabulary lists and word specific to a topic. Many vocabulary development programs use vocabulary lists of high-frequency words, words that commonly appear in the written language. These high-frequency lists typically do not focus on the vocabulary from academic subject areas. Yet these are the words that should be the focus of instruction in a vocabulary development program designed to enhance academic achievement. In a meta-analysis, Stahl and Fairbanks found that instruction in general words like those found in high-frequency word lists enhanced students' ability to understand new content by 12 percentage points. However, when the words are selected because they are critical to academic content, the effect is a 33% gain. The dramatic difference indicates that direct instruction in words specific to academic content can have a profound effect on students' abilities to learn that content. Okay, so I'm going to read it again, and I want you to jot down the important words and phrases. Okay? So you've got an idea what it's about. As the work of Alan Pivio suggests, one of the best ways to elaborate on a newly learned vocabulary word is to generate imagery representations of its meaning. The research on the impact of generating images to learn and remember new words is quite strong. In an analysis of 11 controlled studies, Glenn Powell found that instructional techniques using imagery produced achievement gains in word knowledge that were 34 percentile points higher than techniques that did not. A distinct difference exists between the effects of instruction in words from generalized vocabulary lists and words specific to a given topic. Many vocabulary development programs use vocabulary lists of high-frequency words, words that commonly appear in the written language. These high-frequency lists typically do not focus on the vocabulary from academic subject areas. Yet these are the words that should be the focus of instruction in a vocabulary development program designed to enhance academic achievement. In a meta-analysis, Stahl and Fairbanks found that instruction in general words like those found in high-frequency word lists enhanced students' ability to understand new content by 12 percentage points. However, when the words are selected because they are critical to academic content, the effect is a 33 percentage point gain. The dramatic difference indicates that direct instruction in words specific to academic content can have a profound effect on students' abilities to learn that content. Okay? I'm going to skip the second reading, and I want you to get with a partner and try to write, create the paragraphs, and then then when I tell you to, you'll get together with 4. So right now just 2 and then 2. Okay? let's work. Okay, so 2. You guys do it, and those 2 do it. Okay. Yes, I want you to recreate the paragraph. Right. And there's only 3 of you, so all 3 of you work together the whole time. Okay. If there's only 3.
Saturday, and it's my day off.
Okay. Are you having trouble getting it?
Well, we're trying to put all our pieces together.
Okay. Okay, after. Okay, if you now get together with the 4 people, okay, and let 4 people work on it together. Usually in a classroom, you would give a lot, you would never, in a classroom, you would never skip the second reading, and you would give more time. But we have a short amount of time, and I wanted to give you a flavor of some activities that will help students with vocabulary and reading. Okay, I know this wasn't nearly enough time to finish, but I'd like to get back together again and ask you a couple of questions. Number 1, the vocabulary that you thought was important, did your neighbors think was important? Did you zero in on the same vocabulary? Okay, how many times, let's just say, I mean, obviously you guys are all good students, and you all speak English. So we can't recreate something exactly. But how many times did the targeted vocabulary, the vocabulary that you thought was important, how many times did it get said in your talk, in your talking? Once? A lot, a lot. So let's say you had either an ELL student who didn't know the language as well, or just a student who was LD or had some other kinds of problems, who, was slow learner. How many times would they have heard that vocabulary scaffolded in a way they could catch some of the vocabulary that was going on, so it's not like they were unable to participate in this group. On the other hand, you, as the better student, are probably able to help that student without actually the student realizing so much he or she is being helped. And you'd be surprised, sometimes the student who needs a little more help has caught on to a certain part of the language that you didn't catch on to because they're listening in a different way. So everybody can contribute to an activity like this, and it really does emphasize that vocabulary to a great extent because you had to key in on the vocabulary. Some of the other reasons that this is good, and this doesn't have really to do with vocabulary, but it does give students a chance to explore literary and academic language in depth. You're recreating a text that is written above the level, usually, that students would be speaking and writing. It's an academic text or a novel or whatever. It exposes students to spoken and written language at a level above everyday English. We don't write a text. We could all open one of these textbooks and read it, but we don't talk like that. Let's face it. We talk in a much more casual manner. So this really gets students to do that, and it gives students important practice in listening to and writing more formal English. This is particularly important for students who come from societies or cultures where there's not that much reading done in the home. Okay, where there is a very, they use a less formal standard English. So if you look at Native American communities, and I don't know if any of you would be teaching in a Native American community, but often I lived in an Alaskan Indian village for the first 2 years I was married. And they spoke a very, very different English. And I don't know if anybody has read Other People's Children by Lisa Delpit. The person that she talked to and worked with in Alaska was somebody I knew up there. And they talked about, less formal, that the students use a less formal English. And they had to teach them to use a more formal English to do well in school once they got out of the village school into one of the general high schools that were, somewhere else, and where they might be interacting with students, my family, my children who use a more formal English, or teachers who are not accustomed to using, to have students use a less formal English. So this is useful in lots of ways. And I just wanted to show you this, and I gave you an example of it, because in the paragraphs that you just read or were writing, they talked about the fact that it's so important to use imagery. This is one way of doing that. So when you're teaching about vocabulary, or when children use their own personal dictionaries, you can use something like this where it says the word, use it in a sentence, what's the meaning, and draw a symbol. Draw something meaningful. And that can be a difficult thing if you're talking about abstract words. But it's very important that for some students, to use that image, okay? Or if you don't want to use a paper like this, you can always just suggest, if they have a personal dictionary, to put a little picture in there next to the word and the meaning. but that's important. And then we talked about there are different kinds of words and they need to be learned in different kinds of ways. And I want to talk about cohesion links. Cohesion links in English. And often we can use a closed paragraph. Okay? Do you know what cohesion links are? Anybody? What would be a cohesion link in English? It's what brings, what holds the writing together. So one cohesion, they are connecting. It connects the writing. So all the writing is connected. So if you had been talking about something and you wanted to do a close paragraph with students, for your English speakers, your English only kids, which I guess that's not a good thing to say either, but for the kids who speak fluent English, you could just give them a closed paragraph like this. Or for your ELL kids or kids who have a little bit of extra difficulty, you might give them the words for the closed paragraph and then give them the closed paragraph so it helps them fill in the words. Okay? Or you could write the first letters of the word. And here, particularly for English language learners, just putting a W there would not work because everybody would be looking for a W sound. So let's see if we're going to do this because it's easier, okay? Cohesion links are the important parts of written and spoken paragraphs that connect sentences so that they form a cohesive whole. These links often appear in the form of pronouns that refer back to a person, place, or thing. To a person, place, or thing in a previous sentence, or references that require the reader to remember a previously stated fact or condition. Cohesion links that are frequently used in spoken and written English are often, what do you think they would be to English language learners? Confusing. Yeah, you could use anything, difficult, but confusing to English language learners. This is because of the pronouns, okay, or the use of ellipses where words are understood but not spoken or written are not always easy to connect to words used in previous sentences. Cohesion links lessons make those links more visible and understandable to English language learners and are vital in supporting their understanding of both spoken and written material. Now, these are the words that I chose to put in here. But you could say, if a student without any, without the V there, said are important in supporting, their understanding. So I'm going to show you some examples of cohesion links that are very difficult for English language learners. Not all languages use pronouns. So, you've got to deal with it. So here we have two kinds of cohesion links. Reference. A tall figure was standing outside the door. The figure turned quickly toward her as Sally stepped onto the porch. As she regained her composure, she watched as he turned without a word and walked away toward the bus stop in the rain. So, what's important? How would this be confusing? This is actually this is a very confusing one because The her actually is referring to Sally, and Sally is coming afterwards. But this doesn't usually happen in easier literature. But that is one kind of cohesion link that is difficult. So when you're looking at English language learners and wondering, gee, why didn't they understand? That could be one reason, because English speakers don't usually have trouble with this. Okay, here's another one, conjunctions. He worked all day, although he was tired. Finally, he laid down his hammer. He wasn't finished, but his work was getting sloppy. So he was afraid of ruining his work unless he got some rest. So you can understand how that would be difficult, because not everything is and. Children learn and really quickly, but think how the meaning of the paragraph is different if you just put and in there. He worked all day and he was tired. And he laid down his hammer. He wasn't finished and his work was getting sloppy. See, all of these little words have little different, they're all connecting the words together, the phrases together, but they all have slightly different meanings and put a whole different slant on the meaning of the paragraph. Now, how would you tell somebody, what's the meaning of although? That would be a hard word to actually define, I think, for me. But it's something that we come across all the time, and it's something that we just know. So these are the kinds of things, the kinds of vocabulary that you have to pay attention to with English language learners. Here's another one. He was given a new pair of shoes for Christmas. His old ones were too small. Okay, what's ones mean there? Shoes. But again, that's something you'd have to know. That's how we use it in English. Okay, an ellipsis. He sat down, stood up, and then sat down again. He said, some people like to dance and others don't. So what was left out here? He. And what was left out here? Some people like to dance and others don't like to dance. Okay, so that can be difficult for students. They don't understand that we sometimes just leave out words. Okay? Lexical cohesion. The giant was now in a land of tall trees and flowing rivers. He was still running hard, and although he was slowing down considerably, he went galloping over an enormous forest and on into a huge range of mountains. And here you have to understand that the underlined words go together, and the italicized words go together. One is telling, what is he doing? One is telling about the where he is. Okay, so they have to be able to see those connections in order to understand. So the vocabulary is really important, but all the deeper meanings and how the vocabulary is connected within a particular context is also very important. So if they know the word galloping in connection with a horse, they might think this has to be about a horse. Okay, so that's just another way to think about vocabulary and English language learners. Okay, whoop. It's like it skipped one. But I don't know why. Well, anyway. Okay, so I'm going to show you a unit that I did with first graders. When I did it, it was with all English language learners. Many of them were just beginning to speak English. I was introducing vocabulary, sentence structure, and primary cohesion links. And I'm just going to go through it really quickly. We were talking about the 5 senses. So we did I, see, colors, and I gave them each a sheet like this. And I got this idea from a book called The Semantic Organizer Approach to Reading and Writing. And it was from a researcher up in Canada, and I really liked it. He had I thought good ideas. But they were also given this, and they could, because these were all English language learners, and many, many, many beginning students, they could color the pictures any color they wanted. Then they made their own paragraph. They put the pictures in here. No, this is the next one. But anyway, then they would put them in here, and they would write a paragraph. And when they wrote their paragraph, I would say, okay, you got to indent, and they would say, I see. And if they said pink flowers, I see red apples, I see, black cats, I see brown nuts, and they would write the sentence. And all of the words are right there for them, so it's a completely scaffolded activity. Okay, but every single person's paragraph was different because it depended on the pictures that they chose and the colors that they chose. Okay? So then we wanted to talk about, more vocabulary words, and we took some pictures, and I just chose these. Cute, beautiful, ugly, funny, and interesting. And actually, I had chosen beautiful, ugly, funny, I think, and some of the kids added cute and interesting. And I just ripped apart a whole bunch of Ranger Rick magazines, gave every table a whole bunch of pictures, and said, choose a picture, and you put it under either beautiful or ugly or funny or interesting or cute. And because I think the kids added interesting because none of them fit these. So they said, well, let's just say that's interesting. So after they did that, then they could draw their own animals, or I gave them some animals for the newer kids. And then they had to draw or do sentences again. I see animals, I see cute lion, or I see beautiful lions, I see cute bears, I see interesting snakes, whatever. And they got used to writing a paragraph. Okay? So then we did I can hear. And with this time, I can hear roosters say cock-a-doodle-doo or whatever. I can hear dogs say arf, arf, arf. Actually, in this one, kind of what you said, I think you talked about the fact that you can, or no, maybe it was my group over here, said you can write anything you can say. So I would ask them, what does a dog sound like? And they could say, arf, 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 arf. And if I'd say, okay, how do we write that? And so if they said ARF, I said fine. If they said RFFFF, fine. Doesn't make any difference if that's how you think it sounds. And I hear ducks say quack. So they can do that, but these are vegetables. I cannot hear vegetables growing. So then they had to write something that said, I can hear turkey say gobble, I can hear dogs say arf, arf, and I can hear ducks say quack, but I cannot hear vegetables growing. So we added a different connecting word, not and, but I cannot hear vegetables growing. And then we did tasting, and we tasted these things, and these were, But then I added sometimes. Mints taste good, apples taste good, pretzels taste good. Chocolate sometimes tastes good because we had bitter chocolate and sweet chocolate. But lemons don't taste good. So we added sometimes, and we still had the but. So you've got to look for ways to, and you can see how some of the kids did it. Sometimes. And then they would write, here, pickles taste good, apples taste good, jelly beans taste good, potato chips taste good. I don't know if you wrote that twice. Lemons sometimes taste good, but chocolates don't taste good. Orange peels don't taste good. So these are just some ways that you've got to think about the little words that kids need to know. And but, and sometimes, and although, and maybe. Those are all words that kids need to know, and those are the words, it's not so much you've got to figure out a way to teach them, which you do, but you've got to realize why they didn't understand you in the first place. It wasn't that he wasn't listening. He just didn't understand. Okay? So, what I want you to do is put the following words into groups and then label the groups. And just take a little bit of time. So, with a partner, put these words into, say, 3 groups. I don't care. And we're going to do this for like 2 minutes. Okay, after you've done that for a little bit, there's a piece of paper in your packet that has a very short article in it. It looks like this. It looks like this. So get that out. And I just want you to read it. Okay? And then see if you would change your groups. But just read this for right now. It'll take you a while. We're going to have to kind of speed through. Okay. Read. Read. You can. When you're done reading, you can look up but Okay, even though we probably are not finished, again, if you are putting the words in groups, you know, labeling, deciding which words go in which groups, and you are working in a group of students that has students of varying ability levels or varying language proficiencies, you can see why that would help everyone in the group, because they have a chance to hear the words multiple times, and because it's almost second nature if we're all sitting, particularly not here because we're all in different desks, but if kids are at a table or their desks are put together, it's almost second nature to point to the word while you're saying it. Well, I think content area should be here, or I think function should be here. That's almost second nature. So every time we say a word, we're practically always pointing at it. So the kid who has trouble reading it is getting help. You know, he's getting help the whole time. How did this, thinking about these words first, did it help you understand the reading more? Do you see the difference between content words and content area words? Or could you, if you didn't see it from the reading, could you think about what I read before? The difference between content words as they're being used here and content area words? Content words on your adult frequency list are your nouns. You know, they're not your function words, they're your nouns. Could be chair, table, book. Okay, content area words are the words that the other author that I read to you was saying are your academic content words, the words that you need to do for math. But kids will learn words when they need to learn them, okay? Lists of words for students to learn that they're not going to use till next semester, forget it. They should be introduced the word when they need it. So, what percentage of words does a reader need to know to comprehend a passage? Let's look at this. I want you to read the paragraph and tell me if you understand it. Okay, the BOGO also recognizes the need to invest more in Cusio themselves, 40% of which now lack basic sumwals. Ligachev said Cusio for 28 million monos will be Frazquack by the year 2010, and that capital expenditures in Blaka will increase drastically. Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. What do the BOGO need to invest more in? Cusio, And what percent lack basic sumwals? 40%, So, but could somebody tell me the main idea of this paragraph or summarize it for me? Did you really understand what it said? Okay, so we had 8 unknown words in that paragraph. So we knew 80% of the words. So was that enough of the words? No, it wasn't enough of the words to understand. But what helped you understand and respond correctly to my questions? The words around it, the syntax. We're all good English speakers, so we understand how English is used. We know that this is an article, and we know that there's going to be a noun coming afterward. We know how the language works. So we know how the words go together, so we can figure out. Okay, so what kind of words did you not know in this paragraph? Okay, were they function words? No. Were they
content words, the high-frequency content words? No, they were the academic content words, the content area words that we did not know. How is this the same or different for English language learners? Okay. Anybody got an idea? It's the same
Because they probably wouldn't know the content area words either.
but what would they also not have the benefit of?
They might not know all the function words.
They would not know that they would not know that if you could, they would not know the syntax that tells you so much about the meaning, okay?
Okay, so when we look at word comprehension and reading levels, frustration level, and this is the one I've usually used. I know that other paragraph said something else. Instructional level, independent level, and this is from the National Reading Panel from a few years back. So, semantic cues are critical. You can't read if you can't understand. Okay, so now we're going to do this one. Please read the math problem and tell me the answer. Can you see it from there? Okay, anybody? Let's.
Jean et André sont frères. Jean est l'aîné. Les deux vont au lycée qui se trouve à moins de 5 km de leur maison à Paris. Bien qu'il y ait une différence de 3 ans, I haven't spoken French in years, entre les deux frères, leurs niveaux scolaires ne sont séparés que par 2 années.
Jean est en 4e. En quelle classe est André? So, anybody got an idea? Do we know what it said? No. Do you know what the question is?
Well, you know which one is the question, but do you know what the question means?
In which class is Andre?
Well, you saw kilometers, right? And that says that. So you're using cognates to figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Jean and Andre are brothers. Jean is the elder. The two go to school that is at least 5 kilometers from their house in Paris. Even though there is one difference, even though there is a difference of 3 years between the two brothers, so one is 3 years older, their scholastic levels are separated by only 2 years. John is in 4th grade. What class is Andre in? So what were the words you didn't know in this? Did you know the function words? No. Did you know the content, the high-frequency content words? No. You were guessing. Okay. We had a student once who could not get this one math question, and she only didn't know one word. But it talked about, it was like a chart, and it had kids' grades on it, and how much higher was so-and-so's grade than, but grade, the word grade wasn't on the chart, and she didn't know the word grade. What did that mean? So it's important to know that what kinds of words did you not, what helped you understand the word problem? We didn't take a lot of time, but somebody tried to use cognates, but so think about teaching math. Imagine you are a 1st grader. What are some language patterns expressed as math sentences that you need to understand to solve this problem? Teacher may say, well, if there were boxes there, count the boxes.
Can you, I'm going to go through this. How many altogether? How many in all? How much is 3 plus 2? What is the sum of? What is 2 plus 3? Add the two numbers. 3 squares and 2 more are 3. So, what do you do when you're a teacher? Maybe it's important to make sure that when introducing new material, you need to make sure that you use the same vocabulary so that you're not always asking the question in a different way. So things like that are really, really important. And then when you're talking about content vocabulary, because that's what we're kind of into now, content vocabulary. They say if you can connect things together, you will remember them more. You will understand them better. So this is a vocabulary example that I also like to use. Like, and I just put it in here because I like it. And if you can't do images, which you can do, but you have a word and you have two words, like say urban and rural, and then you compare the two words. And I must say, some people just do this naturally. My husband would drive you nuts because every time he sees something new, meets someone new, he says, "Oh, doesn't he or she remind you of?" Or "Doesn't this remind you of?" And it drives you nuts, but he remembers everything. So, I mean. So, when teaching the content areas, use what you have. And what you have in your classroom, okay, when you're teaching vocabulary for the content areas, you have the charts and graphs in your texts. You have charts and graphs that students make. Use your other classmates. Use the dictologue. Say, oh, there's another thing that we didn't do. It's called Say Something. And it's sort of, you can use partner reading. Say Something is like one person reads and the other person has to ask a question about it. Has to ask a question. Okay, here. They have to, the partner reads, the students summarize, clarify, make connections, agree or disagree with the author, ask questions, and so forth. Okay, you have to keep in mind what children are learning when you are teaching them. English speakers are developing their language skills and learning content. But they are not really having to learn a language while they are learning content, okay? They are still developing their language skills though, okay? But ELL students are learning both language and content all the time, but sometimes more one than the other. So if you look at this, if you're teaching in the second language, so you're teaching in English, the kids speak Spanish, and they don't know the concept. It's a brand new concept to that kid. They're learning both language and content. Very difficult. Give them some time. Give them some repetitions. Okay? And I don't mean repetitions just saying it over and over again. It's got to be used in many different ways. Okay? If you're teaching in the first language, you're teaching an unknown concept to an English speaker, it's concept development. They're just learning about the water cycle. Okay? If you're teaching in the second language and the concept is already known, this is heaven for an English language learner because then it's only language development. They already know the water cycle. So they already know evaporation and condensation and all that, and you're just helping them relabel it. So that's great, okay? And if you're teaching in the first language, you're teaching in an English speaker, the concept is known, they're doing concept and language mastery, which is okay too, you know. But remember that, I'm almost done. You don't have a space for L1 and a space for L2 up here in your brain. You just have one space for common underlying language proficiency. So that what you know in one language is transferred to the other language. Okay, so you really want to make use of that. Many of our students, our English language learners, are coming from villages much like this. At least in Urbana, we have a lot of kids from rural Mexico and rural Guatemala. And so, I want you to look at this. If you were to give them
So this student that you just saw there, some sort of a sheet that said, put the implements that we used yesterday or in the past here, and the implements that the tools that we use today over on this side. What are you teaching them? So here you've got a broom, here you've got a vacuum cleaner. Where would... The vacuum would be today. But are you teaching them something that's true? No, because everybody isn't. So it would be very confusing to them because they are coming from a culture that for whom this would not be true. Okay? And you're even teaching them false knowledge because lots of people still use that today. Also, I'm going to, one other thing, when you're teaching vocabulary, particularly to students who are from rural villages, and you will have some, at least in Urbana, like I said, we have Guatemalans, Congolese, Mexicans who are coming from very rural areas. That house looks a lot like the house that the children in those other pictures lived in. They did not call that their house a hut. They called it a house, casa, maybe casita, my little house. But they called it a house. So it's very important what kind of language we use and are teaching students. And I think it's very important that we don't have English speakers learning that the house that that other person lived in, that's just a hut. I mean, we really don't want to be teaching them that either. But there are different ways to teach vocabulary, or like this is, what are things that are necessary and not necessary to have in a house? What rooms are necessary? So here you've got a kitchen, a bedroom, a library, a bathroom, a dining room, and a playroom. Well, the little girl in this picture she had one room. So I guess I would want everybody to not even think about this. You would put an X on everything. You don't need a room for all of that. But you do need places in your house for functions. You need a place to cook. You need a place to eat. You need a place to sleep. So we've got to think about what we are teaching students when we are teaching them vocabulary. Okay, I'm going to go on. Okay. Assessment, journals and creative language use. I always use the journals to see were they getting the grammar, okay? Observation, no correct use of technical vocabulary. Engage students, comparison of words. Okay, if you're testing for comprehension, you can start with a WH question. Who, whom, what. And if they can't do that, go to an either or question. And if they can't do that, go to a yes/no question. And if they can't do that, go to a directive question. And because if I said to you, what prize do you think the winner will win? And you didn't understand me, how would it make you feel if I just said, oh, well, what do you think? But if I could make that question one that would be more easily answerable by someone who couldn't get that productive oral vocabulary engaged up here, then you're giving that kid a better chance to get to answer your question. And this is just one more thing. A high school kid, and this I did get from the IRC. There's only 2 more slides after this. This is what, given a picture of a beach, a high school male student wrote. The beach is big and beautiful, has much sand. The water is blue and cold, moves very much. The sun makes warm the sand. Are many birds. The girls walk in the beach, are very beautiful. Have fun with friends. Boys play baseball and see the girls beautiful. Likes to see them. Everybody have good day in the beach. So, what do you think of that student? He likes the beach. He likes looking at the girls. Kind of, okay. This is what he wrote in Spanish.
And when you translate, this is what he wrote. On this island there are many beautiful things. This island reminds me of that of New York's. It is beautiful because of its beaches and palm trees that can be found along the shore. I would love to spend my life on an island like this one with much silence, without automobiles, without the zooming of cars, only to observe the silence. And in the mornings watch the sun as it rises at dawn, observe it tenderly and smoothly as it illuminates the water, and feel the mist from the grass and leaves on the trees, and observe from afar the sparkle of the buildings and the water beyond the city. What a beautiful time to live without problems on the edge of silence. Same student. So I guess what I want to say to you is never assume. Okay? You really have to give students a chance. And vocabulary, why did he write the other paragraph? Because those were the words he knew. Those were the words he knew. So keep that in mind when you're working with ELLs. That's it. Sorry I kept you longer.